Hello lovelies, welcome back to Amy of Melbourne. My name's Amy, obviously, and today we're going to be looking at things that you can sew for your hair care. I followed the curly girl method somewhat, but not completely, but these would work for that. I've also shown you options to do them for kids sizing.
First things first, we need to cut out our pattern pieces and stick them together using glue, sticky tape, or both. Try to line up the cut edge with the uncut edge where there's the markings on the paper. You can also use some of the other words to help keep everything even. Do the same things to add each row together. Then all you need to do is cut out all the pieces. I try and make sure that anywhere there's a join line, I put a little bit of sticky tape just to hold everything together. The first thing that we're going to make today are some pillow curlers. These are a heatless way to create beautiful spirals in your hair, and they're comfortable so that you can actually sleep with them in. To make our pillow curlers, I have a template that is for free as download from my website. And then you need some foam rollers. It doesn't matter what size, but you do need to consider whether or not you need to make this bigger, depending on the size of your rollers. You also need what we call in Australia pipe cleaners, but you might know them as chenille sticks. They're flexible wire that's got fluff threaded through it. Lastly, you need cotton fabric. I'm using some leftover scraps of just plain cotton fabric. I'm pretty sure this is a quilting fabric that I got from Spotlight. The fabric you choose needs to be cotton or linen. It needs to be something that washes really well, that it can get wet and dry over and over again. I'm going to show you two different methods for how to put this together. To make your pillow curlers, you need to cut out 2 pieces of fabric per curler. This will say on the pattern that it needs to be mirrored, but if you don't have a directional print, then it's fine. You can just cut it out whichever way you'd like to. Okay, let's put them together. You take your regular foam roller and take the center out. You don't need this anymore. Then take your chenille stick and fold it in half. So then you're gonna take the chenille stick and insert it into the roller, like so, about halfway, so it looks sort of like a lolly. The easy way is to place your roller in the middle, your other piece right sides facing out on top. Pin and clip all the way around the outside, encasing the roller in there, and then sew around. Then you can either finish off those edges with an overlocker, with pinking shears, or with a zigzag stitch. Depends how much you're planning on washing these. For this one here, we are going to have it right sides facing out and our chenille stick lolly inside the center. And we're going to sew around it, this time using approximately a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to take it now over to the overlocker. If you don't have an overlocker, then you can simply just put your machine to a zigzag stitch and keep as close as you can to the edge. See it just there, look, there's a zigzag. Some sewing machines have like an overcast stitch or a stitch to do the edging so that it sort of mimics what an overlocker can do. Your other option, again, is to pink them. Consider if you're going to pink them that this edge, this raw edge, is on the outside of something that is going to be handled quite a lot. You can also use some sort of bias tape around the edging, which looks really beautiful. To finish this off, we have to come over here to the overlocker. Definitely don't get the chenille pipe cleaner stick in through here where you got your cutting blade. Your alternative construction method is to put them right sides together, making sure that you leave a gap so that you can turn it right sides out. For this curler, we're going to sew all the way around to here, making sure that we double over the ends. Now that it's sewn together with its little hole still there, you need to clip the corners. Unless you don't want to, it just stops there being any bulk. Make sure that you don't go through the actual stitching. Because this is curved, we need to clip into the seam allowance. Seam allowance is the space between the outside edge and where you've sewn. Snip, you do not want to go through your stitches. You just snip it, just a little cut in there. The alternative to this, and my personal preference because I have them, is to what we call pink these. Special scissors that have a serrated edge. You probably played with something like this when you're in kinder, but these ones are specific for fabric. Then you're going to turn it the right way around. So push all the fabric out through that hole so that it comes to the right side. Now take your foam roller and you're going to put that inside this cavity, trying not to completely destroy your chenille sticks as you go. Okay, so now that that's in there, what we're going to do is we need to close this up. So we're going to top stitch around the whole thing and it's going to close up this little hole. You can also make this easier on yourself doing this part by ironing those seams down. No, no, kitty. No, no. Meow.
Our next project is just a simple hair wrap.
To make the hair wrap, you need something to pattern off. I've got a free pattern available on my website, but otherwise if you already own a hair wrap, you can simply trace around it. You also need microfiber of some kind. These are just some old microfiber gym towels that I'm going to use today. You can also piece this together. You don't have to use big pieces if you've got little pieces, like even microfiber dishcloths are totally fine if you want to upcycle some of those. You can also choose to do t-shirt material but make the same thing. I would definitely recommend doing a double layer if you're going to use t-shirt material. You can also just use any sort of plain cotton or linen if you wanted to. This is what's usually done for hair wraps. You will also need some kind of elastic. I'm just using elastic by the meter, 6 centimeters-ish. You can also just use a regular hair elastic and sew that in. You need a button as well. This is your opportunity to use up all of those random one-off buttons that come with clothes that you no longer own that you've got a stash of. So yeah, grab that, use it. First things first, on here it says cut to mirrored. They only need to be mirrored if you have a fabric that has a print or something on it. This is not, this is exactly the same on either side, so I don't have to mirror it, which means that I can make more economical use of my fabric, which is great. I have pins here to make sure that I had enough room to fit this on either side.
I'm also lining my piece up with the bottom of my fabric because it already has a finished edge, which I'm going to use.
Cutting, implement. So that's one done. Oh, watch out for the fuzzies. All right, I'm going to turn it around. You don't know me personally, I'm neurodivergent and I hate the feeling of microfiber. It's good for my hair, so I have it, but oh, I hate it.
If your fabric doesn't have a finished edge like mine, then now's the time to finish that edge.
So now you need to stack one on top of the other. Get your pins, pegs, or clips. We're going to do this edge first. Once this is cut out and pinned, that's when you need to get your elastic. So that is about 5 inches. There you go. So once you've got this, about 5 inches or whatever that is in centimeters, 5 inches or 12 centimeters. But it also depends on what button you're using. If you're using a really small button, make sure that this is A, thin, and B, that you don't do it too big. What you're going to do now is here, you're just going to place this just under wherever that marking was, which is basically just under. And then you're going to clip that between all of the layers. So it's right in there and you're going to sew over the top of it. Remember, in here is where we have the elastic, just here. So we've got to make sure that we sew right over the top of it and maybe go over it a couple of times. You can see now that mine have separated because I'm not using a walking foot, though I should. If you have one, use one. And it's basically meaning that the bottom is being pulled through by the feed dogs and the top isn't. So the presser foot is stretching out this fabric. It's fine, but it's annoying. So now that that's done, you can see that our little elastic is just there. This has now been overlocked. Again, I recommend that you overlock it all before you stitch it together because gosh damn, did this barely make it through my overlocker. Turn it the right way around now so you can see it. All we have to do is just fold up this edge. If you've overlocked it, you just need to do it once and then we're just going to sew around it. Now to sew on a button. Doubled over thread, you can't see it obviously. To finish off the button for a job like this, push your needle out to the side, just underneath the button. And then you're going to go around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. 5.5-ish. Then you're going to push it back through to the back side. Lovely. Then you're going to tie it off on the back. curly hair care item number 3 is the classic silk or satin pillowcase to protect your hair while you sleep. To make your pillowcase, you need either satin or silk. You need something that is going to let your hair move across it really easily. Now it's time to measure your pillow, or you can use the measurements that I'm going to have on the screen next. Your short rectangle is 53 centimetres by 75 centimetres, and your long rectangle that has the fold over is 100 by 53 centimetres, 20 centimetres for the fold over. I use friction pens because they erase when you heat up the ink. Definitely check with your fabric first if you care, if it's permanent. I have had these almost do like a bleaching effect ever so slightly on some fabric, so just be careful. So this is the salvage. You don't want this in your project at all. You want to try and get it off if you can. If you're not going to see it, if you've got really deep hems or seams, if you've got really deep hem, they're actually really great because they're very strong, but they do show on the other side, like all the dots. So if you don't want those showing on your project, then you make sure that you don't count them in your measurements. To make it easier to cut straight, if you have a quilting ruler like I do, then you can simply line up your ruler with those lines. Some things just happened, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see them, but I thought I'd show you in case this happens to you. One, I was stupid and I tried to iron this before the next shot. How terrible of me. But because of that, it leaked water onto my fabric, and now I've got these funky lines all over it. This will come out in the next wash. It's fine, I'm just annoyed. My handy dandy friction pen did actually leave a mark permanently. So that's been ironed now. It's a little bit through to the other side. So that's why I said be careful, do a swatch, keep it inside your seam allowances, and you'll be fine. But just be careful. Both of our ends aren't being sewn together, and we're going to fold it once, then fold it again, and we're going to stitch along that fold. This is a really good point that you should definitely use an iron. For this pillowcase, we're going to use French seams. So you're going to put your fabric wrong sides together, right sides facing out, and then fold that flap section up inside those two pieces. The exact size of that flap doesn't matter, just so long as your two outside pieces are approximately the same size. The little flap can actually sit up just a smidge higher than the other piece of fabric, and it doesn't matter. Tips for working with slippery fabric. Number 1, you can use paper or tissue paper under the fabric as it goes through your sewing machine so that the feed dogs don't eat your fabric. You can also iron on water-soluble interfacing to stabilize all of your fabric. If pinning isn't working, baste it with a needle and thread using big running stitches. Use basting spray glue that's used for quilting so that you can hold both sides of your fabric together. Glue just the seams together with the Sewline glue pen, which helps your pins to work before you sew. Also, it's a freaking pillowcase. No one else has seen it but you. Unless we're very lucky. Now that the first half of the French seams are done, we've sewn it together with the right sides out, wrong sides in. We now need to trim back all of these seam allowances, give it a press, and then we can flip it. Last thing we need to do is we need to clip these corners. The most important step with the French seams is to make sure that you repress everything before you sew. So now that it's pressed, the right sides are together, the wrong sides are on the outside. Your pocket flap thing is on the outside. You're going to go back around, making sure that whatever seam allowance you do, that it's big enough to go over and encompass that seam on the inside. Final DIY hair care product is a hair plop. Traditionally, hair plops are done using t-shirts, but I thought that a bit of pretty fabric would be a little bit better. When selecting your fabric for this project, pay close attention to the stretch. This fabric is a 4-way stretch, stretches one way and the other. Otherwise, you'll have a two-way stretch fabric, which stretches in one direction, but then doesn't stretch in the other. And if it does that, you need to follow the dogs or the direction of greatest stretch marks on the pattern. I again have a free pattern for this project, which is on my website. This can be a no-sew pattern if you use knit fabric, which doesn't fray. Simply cut out one on the fold and add a closure. Otherwise, cut two on the fold, sew together right sides facing in, leaving a gap to turn. Here it is, and the gap's here. Now, if I was intelligent and had thought about this before I made it, and if I had known I was going to piece this together, I would have left the gap here. That way I could have folded it in and no one would have ever seen this little gap, and I wouldn't have to top stitch this. Again with our trusty knitting needle, we're going to go through and poke out all of the corners. Blech, trying not to just stab straight through it. And then top stitch. So if you're going to do the closure the same way as me, you want to have some of these little snaps. You also need an awl for poking holes into the fabric, and you need one of these clampy dudes. Measure in at least 1 centimetre from each of the edges, and then mark that hole where you're going to use your awl. Using your awl, you're going to poke right through both layers of fabric. Push the spike through the hole you've already made, then put the other side on and clamp together using the tool so that you have your press stud attached.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to, you can follow me on Instagram. Otherwise, there's some videos after this that you could watch. And see you later.
Insert chenille stick into the roller. And try and be an adult about it. Oh, this video is just talking nothing but flaps and chenille sticks in holes. I'm trying not to be Australian and go up in my inflection every time I speak.
This is how you do it, guys.